Tevez sta solo, Tevez dell'area, li fa fuori tutti, Tevez, si apre la porta, Tevez, gol, da dietro, Pirlo dentro,
Buongiorno Bianconeri, welcome back to the All Juve Cast channel. Yes, this is impromptu because what the hell? Never a dull moment around Juventus, and yesterday was no different. All right, so everybody that's here already, look at the live chat already on fire. We got myself, we got Anthony, and Lou. Good to have you on again, brother.
Good morning, Lou.
Yeah, wish it was better circumstances, but nonetheless, I'll take it, my friend.
I only show up when bad things happen.
True.
Oh,
like a
man.
nightmare.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Quick reminder, everybody, please like the video. And, of course, subscribe to the channel. If you're a diehard Juve fan, this is the channel for you. We got you covered through thick and thin. And, yeah, today it's going to get ugly, and we got a lot to say and a lot to tackle and cover. Let's get to some of the comments out there, Jeremiah, guys. The fact that we're the only club punished is absolutely ridiculous and disgraceful.
We'll get to that.
Bloody injustice. We will get to that. Dogs P will only get worse for us. We will get banned from Champions League for many years, I think. Raven, minus 15 points. It's not over. Now, if UEFA will ban us for more than 1 year, it will be even worse than in 2006.
No, it won't.
How about that?
I don't know if it's worse than that. Clubs in other leagues are untouched. Only Germany went after tax cheats. Apex, hey, fino alla fine. We're gonna stand by. We're gonna wait for everything to completely unfold. There's a ton more. I'm just gonna say ciao to all of you, and we can maybe get into this. I think for obvious reasons, and especially when it's myself ready to go through all this and tackle it. I'm pretty fired up, and I was really fired up yesterday. And maybe it's better if Anthony takes the reins on this one today, because I got a lot on my mind, and I'm probably going to unleash at some point. So, Anthony, why don't you run us by kind of the timeline yesterday and what exactly went down, all right? And then
I could probably save us all. I could probably save us all about an hour and just say this. That's it. That's all I really need to say. What the hell? Because realistically,
I've had showers that lasted longer than that hearing. Okay. So something's up. Something's up. I just feel that way. I can't help but feel that way in how quick this all transpired and flipped. So over here in Canada, and I was talking to someone on Twitter who's obviously a lawyer and whatnot, and I've come to know him quite well. There is a precedent that has been set, but I feel like in Italy, they just fucking change the rules like this on any given day, on any given moment, because over here, there would be a precedent that was set by them throwing this thing out twice already. So it would, in fact, make it extremely difficult for the prosecutors to go in again and try to flip this thing in a trial. It would be very hard to do that because the precedent has already been set. But now, all of a sudden, from everything we're hearing, it's like it's been flipped, and now all of a sudden it's extremely hard for us to come out of this thing. But Ant, why don't you run us through everything, and we'll...
Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's not... We're going to take this step by step before these two monkeys over here absolutely blow their tops. There's a reason why I'm up here. There's a reason why I'm sitting in this corner today. So from everything that we've read, this is sort of because everyone's like, why aren't other clubs being investigated? Okay, we'll take a step back before we absolutely let the volcano loose. So there was an original trial that had 9 clubs in it, and they were all cleared. I believe they're all cleared twice, as you said, Al. But so there was an appeal to those verdicts based on the Prisma investigation. Which was a civil investigation, the false accounting, the misleading of the stock exchange. See, that's the big thing that people forget. Juventus is a publicly traded company, so we fall under some different rules compared to other clubs. Always kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So, how do we want to go through this? So then there was, of the 8 other clubs charged, none of them in the previous investigation were involved in the Prisma investigation. So that's why only Juventus was being gone after, attacked, however you want to put it, by the prosecutor's office in this appeal. Now, are 5 other clubs that aren't those 8 that could still face some sort of penalties coming on February 22nd. So stay tuned for that. I don't have what those 5 clubs are. If someone wants to help me with that, we can dig into that. Sorry, there's been a lot the past 24 hours. This is pretty wild. Now, so then we go to the so now that's basically what it is. They had the original trial thrown out twice. An appeal was brought based on new evidence, but since those other 8 teams were not involved in the new evidence, that's why only Juventus was gone after in this case. So I know it's like, why people are asking, look at the Napoli
That's
case.
also a theory, though.
Correct.
Yeah, because that was coming from Gab Marcotti, and he's not 100% sure. He just says he made sure he was clear. He thinks this is kind of how it played out.
But it makes sense.
It does make sense.
It's not it doesn't seem to me to be some blown up theory. It's just based on the proceedings and how it went. It does make sense.
There were some. Sorry to interrupt you, Tony. There were news reports yesterday indicating kind of the same thing that backed up that theory. That, like, hey, this is a separate investigation. They didn't mention the Prisma, investigation as the link to it, and that's why there's clubs that are different. It had talked about that Juventus has like a different situation compared to the other clubs based on the fact that they're a publicly traded company. A few other things that are in there. So I just wanted to verify kind of that theory a little bit for us.
Now, I know Al has something that's, another way of sort of helping everybody out with this one. But before we get to that, Al, you brought up a good point with precedents. Now, over here in North America, courts seem to work, as a legal system, not a justice system, right? Over here, it's the law. You go through, precedents. You have to have precedents in order to come up with something new. In Italy, it seems more of like not a legal system, it's more of a justice system. It seems like for me in this case, and again, this is just my opinion, someone was looking for justice, not any sort of like legal recourse here. And so going from 9 points, I think we should start right there. 9 points was the original request, and then it gets up to 15. That is obviously where the lawyers are going to start. And Juventus is going to hire some big lawyers to go after this, because this is the financial impacts of this are just unbelievable.
A major key to that is that when it goes to Coney, the appeal, they can't reduce it to 9 points. It's either 15 or it's nothing. Just so everyone knows,
and just to add on to that,
because they could make a case to get it removed because of the punishment changing, right? I mean, that's. Like everyone yesterday, I think the first reaction was, wait, how do we get from 9 to 15, right? Like, that kind of came out of nowhere.
But just to add to that too, this is why I talk about that precedence and why it's so important, but seemingly not in Italy, because we cannot actually appeal. Like I said, those points, like, they're not going away. It's either all or nothing, but the procedural legitimacy is what we can appeal.
Correct.
The big thing with that is right now, it seems like that's a huge uphill battle. It's like something like 7 to 20% success rate in doing that. So don't bank on it. But over here, this is why I bring up setting precedents, because that would be huge. And that percentage would be a hell of a lot higher based on the fact that it was thrown out twice. Because battling procedural legitimacy, a big part of that would be the precedents that they set by kicking this thing out twice prior. However, right now, from everything we're gathering, we are getting the feeling that all of a sudden that precedence is out the window and we're fighting the uphill battle, and it's somewhere around 7 to 20% on appeal percentage for expecting some change. That's terrifying considering what we're looking at overall. Okay, I can't believe the amount of bullshit that I'm reading out there, okay, from Chihuahuas all over the fucking board out there. Yeah, rival fans, whatever.
Rival fans.
They're laughing at. Look, it's hilarious that they want to fucking laugh, because this actually reflects bad on the league your club is in.
But also, most of their presidents Remember, when this first came out against Juventus, when the Prisma investigation started, who were the people who defended us? Lotito, who is publicly open, hates Juventus. ADL, who publicly hates Juventus. Like these are the guys who were defending us. Cassano, who literally never says anything good about Juventus, was defending us last night, because this is something that happens, right? It's the way that Italy competes with the other nations. They inflate their values legally and they make some money off of it. It's
so
what are we even talking about here? Plus Valenza over the past 10 years, Juventus 673 million, Roma 507 million, Napoli 437 million, Inter 317 million. What the fuck are we talking about here? It's all loopholes. All this whole case came up, and it's laughable because it's all loopholes. And when the people want to talk about player value, listen, I don't care if it's a player value. I don't care if it's a trading card. If you collect those, I don't give a shit if you collect Pokemon cards. What is it worth? What is a player worth? Expensive. It's worth whatever the hell you can sell it for.
It's subjective.
Okay. Whatever that team creates the player's value, not transfer market. Okay. Or whatever the hell they tried to use the first time, which is laughable. The guy literally comes out and says, he's like, I don't know. He's like, I'm just making up numbers. Players are worth whatever the fuck the other teams dealing with them want to pay. That's the bottom line, okay? All this whole case started over certain deals, started making them look into it, but everybody knew what they were doing. The biggest thing that we have here is show me an official rule book that simply states you cannot do this to up because what they're doing is upping their numbers so that they could spend that particular summer in the transfer market. When you look at the deals like Pjanic and whatever, they are showing a positive in their books, so that allows them to work in that transfer mercado. That is a loophole, okay? That is a way around their system. Everybody knows what the clubs are doing, and it's definitely not just Juventus. So what are they going to do? Are they going to go over every single transfer in history and every team that's ever performed a transfer? Because that's what essentially they're going to have to do. They're setting a precedence that they can't monitor, they can't regulate, and they can't track worth a shit. This league is a joke, and this is absolutely laughable. People want to talk about now, they're saying, oh, it's not that, it's the criminal charges based on paying players under the table. Listen, that's a whole separate case. So Juve faces another few possibilities here. One of them is the salary case with the FIGC, okay, and also with the Turin prosecutors. Then you have the case with Consob and a case with UEFA.
Mm-hmm.
This is far from over, and I'm interested to finally find out. They say 10 days. In 10 days, they have to distribute what it was that's changed. That's changed the proceedings. In 10 days, we should have some answers. But this is wild to me that it shifted so fast when the precedent was set. And how on earth can you just make it Juventus? Juventus needs to fight full throttle, full force. And you know what? There's a reason, like Lou pointed out, all these other guys were hush-hush. And the reason is because you're opening up a fucking can of worms. And Juve should fight it. And you know what I'd like to see them do? I don't know if there's any possibility of it. But you know what? If you're going to deduct penalties in the middle of a championship that's being contested right now as we speak, shut the whole fucking thing down. And this is on freeze until you deal with all these appeals. Fuck you, Serie A. Okay, that's what they should do. They should fight it and freeze the whole fucking league because hey, you're gonna appeal points for here. This questions a whole Serie A. Shut it down until we.
Let's give Lou a chance here. Go ahead, Lou.
Sorry, Berto, but this is exactly what's wrong with Serie A, right? In La Liga, we know Barcelona. Every year you read the Barcelona story. We can't register our players. We can't register our players. Barcelona's not going to register the players. Day of the deadline, magically they register all of their players, right? And then Tavares, the president of La Liga, comes out and he goes, it's legal, right? Because Barcelona, Real Madrid, there is no La Liga without Barcelona, Real Madrid, right? But in Serie A, they take a legal rule and they go and they just crucify one of the biggest clubs. And they've done it once before. They're doing it again. I mean, we'll call it as is. This is the beta version of Calciopoli. It's not Calciopoli, but it's the beta version of it, where they're doing the best they can without sending you to Serie B to kind of destroy your club. But
so again, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
But in La Liga, they understand, hey, this affects our federation. This affects our national team. It affects our marketing. It affects the way we do things. You're talking about a club that literally was a year and a half ago had Cristiano Ronaldo on their team in a decade where Serie A was not, a pristine league. Fans, I think a lot of the rival fans, they look at Serie A with this like golden gaze, right? And I think because for a lot of them for the last decade, it's only been Serie A. It's not really been the Champions League or anything else, but Serie A is kind of the worst it's ever been. They don't do anything in Europe. I saw someone yesterday compare an Italian team winning the Champions League would be like Leicester winning the Premier League. And I thought that was a pretty good analogy. And you only make that a lot difficult, what you're doing now, because Serie A, marketing value will go down. You just lost Juventus, right? Are you going to say Lazio is going to be appealing to people if they finish fourth place? It's bullshit. And then what is being charged against us is bullshit. It's one thing if they're breaking the rules and they're legitimate, right? And you're like, okay, they broke 1,000 rules. We got to do something here. But again, you look at the other leagues, you wouldn't hear a sniff about this in the Premier League. There would be no chance United, Liverpool, any of them would be charged with anything. The Super League thing, it was like, oh yeah, screw those clubs in England. And then it was like, okay, we can blame Agnelli and La Liga. Forget those clubs. It's like it never happened, right? Because they understand the business of it. But in Italy, they don't give a shit, right? They just don't care. And that's fine. We'll miss another 2-3 World Cups before they figure it out. But, if you look at Juventus too, Juventus is developing all the young talent in Italy, right? Juventus is. You just
we're going to need them all now
out of Europe. Good for you.
So now I think everyone understands why I'm sitting here and those two are sitting where they're sitting. So sort of to switch gears a little bit. I don't know if there was that article you wanted to go through, Al, or you've already touched on it quite a bit in your little rant there, which just
shines a light on how what they're talking about and what they're now what they're trying to punish us with is loopholes. There are no actual legit rules broken. The one that's interesting, this is what I find the wildest, okay? Gravina himself, we're a month out from his exact words stating when it comes to salaries, okay? His exact words. Whatever comes of this case, Juve's registration was never in jeopardy because of it or anything. What I find hilarious is that they're even talking about registry in Serie A. Where are the parameters to register for Serie A? You know what the parameters are? A club not being bankrupt. That's what it is. Okay. Hey, if you're not bankrupt, okay, you qualified either through promotion in Serie B or you stayed up in Serie A. Congratulations, you're registered. UEFA, completely different ball game. And to be honest, if we're banned from Europe or whatever, I think it would have been a benefit to this team overall in getting back to where we need to be domestically. That's a whole separate side story. But in UEFA, I could see it because there are regulations that tie into the financial side of things. Now, they're talking about criminal stuff in terms of salaries, paying players under the table that isn't marked on your books. Okay.
They don't want to get into that.
Okay. But I will say this. And there's a good chance, strong chance through COVID that's what was going down. They were making salary maneuvers and whatever. They ended up making.
Can I just pause you there for 1 second?
Probably under the table.
I was talking with an Arsenal fan the other day about that yesterday, and he goes, "We were doing that. We were doing salary maneuvers, but you don't hear about it."
Yeah,
so,
in England,
sorry, go ahead.
In England, they're like, "Hey, Arsenal, London, they have a big fan base, bunch of young players. They'll be good in Europe next 5 years." They're like, "We'll move that to the side." And in Italy, they're like, "Yeah, let's serve them on the head."
And I'm sure that those players were getting paid under the table after, because what Juve is being reported of doing, this is where it changes. Yes, you can make your salary maneuver. Yes, you can freeze and defer salary payments. But what they're saying is that they paid them afterwards without correcting the books without tracking it. That is a huge no-no for a publicly traded company. However, where does that tie in to the sporting side? And again, deducting points in a championship. I'm not seeing that correlation for Serie A, okay?
Right.
UEFA, okay, loosely still in terms of the salary stuff. But because ultimately your financial fair play or whatever is in fact based off revenue. It's revenue versus spending and everything. That's what your fair play is. The salary wages, that's how I can see it tying into UEFA. But still, I don't understand the sporting side here where Serie A is coming in with that. It's a little wild to me.
That's getting back to the precedence thing. And again, everybody, we won't have the ruling for another 10 days. So again, until then, how many games do we have in that time frame? 2. Also, just for people to know, Juventus has 30 days to appeal, but the appeal won't be heard in front of a judge or the court until April at the earliest. So they say 30 days. Oh, we'll get this resolved by, end of February. That's not the case. It's going to take a while before it's heard. So we're going to have to eat this minus 15 points for quite a while.
Freeze the league. Get your lawyers out there. Freeze the league. We're supposed to play. Our players are in the middle of turmoil. Max Allegri's in turmoil. Freeze the league. You're contesting. You're doing something. You're punishing us that has major implications. Could affect the rest of the season. The season is frozen until the appeal goes through. If it's April, too bad. Tough titties, Serie A. Fuck you.
I never heard of anyone bringing up freezing Serie A, but that's actually a pretty good point. But I'd like to get your opinion on something. Now, for me, for this whole thing for me is absurd. People might be saying, why isn't Tony all upset? Listen, the entire thing to me is hilarious. Really, it's what it is. Like, it's like the precedent, it's been thrown out twice, and now you go from the prosecutor asked for -9, they give -15. It's completely absurd. So I still think, like Lou always says, there's something wrong with the Matrix, and that's what's happening here, and that's what I'm going with.
It's crazy that we went from feeling very confident, very strong because of the precedent they set to now actually thinking like, how is this happen? And when guys like fucking Antonio Cassano are coming out and they're back in Juve and they're like, no, this is crazy.
That's the other thing. So these other investigations, right? Take UEFA out of it, right? But the capital gains, the consob, which allegedly has been cleared, but we were already cleared once and it's come back. Do you guys I don't have much faith that they're actually going to do anything, that they're going to, take it legally. Like, we could be cleared of those, and a couple months later, we might be found guilty of them. That's
right. So that's
a weird precedent.
That's sort of what I want to get at. Is okay. We don't have all the details. We'll get to those. We'll get to what facts were raised this time that weren't raised the last time, and obviously it was something in the Prisma investigation. Whether it was the wiretaps, can't believe people are still using wiretaps and getting nabbed for those. But still, that's neither here nor there. The fact still remains that the entire board resigned and Anelli stepped down 2 months ago. So do you think they saw this coming? So when I heard this yesterday, I was like, their lawyers must have said, we have an inkling or we have inside information to say that this potentially could be coming down. So for me, I'll get both your opinions that they saw this coming. And that's the main reason why they cleaned house.
I think so. Because I think that the whole presentation, when you go back to it, bringing Luciano Moggi up there to speak about, what happened the last time they came down on us like this. Mm-hmm. I think that the resignations, maybe the rumors about the new sporting director, it's all kind of there, right? That there's either it's going to happen or there's the potential that you could get, a 2-year ban. So I agree with that theory. I think that they at least knew it was a possibility. So they all kind of stepped down to part ways. Also, they're being wiretapped. So you kind of want to get away from the team anyway.
Wiretapped.
Yeah, I can't believe that's a thing in 2022, but 2023.
So here's the thing. And it looks like, there's the live chat's making some great points. Why wouldn't they? The AJC Army's the best, second to none. But saying it jeopardizes contract extensions also. Yep. And a lot is on the table. So I'm seriously, like, I'm not kidding when I say freeze the fucking league and you guys clean up your mess, Syria. This is a fucking joke.
But that's logical, Alberto. They don't operate in logic.
I know. They're dinosaurs and they have no clue. And that's why this league will actually never thrive again. But it's sad from a fan standpoint that saw it when it was the top league in the world and all awesome. The talent want to come here. It's sad to see where it is now and what they are doing. I don't care what the Chihuahuas out there want to say about their small clubs. And even if they win a trophy or whatnot, they're still going to be irrelevant in the grand scheme of things in Italy, okay? They can try to play this little charade or whatever and live in this fucking fantasy world. But Italy is a three-headed snake. And if you cut off one of those heads, it's going to suffer, okay? There are the three big clubs, and if any one of them goes through one of this, something like this, it is a detriment to the league. I don't care what some of these other clubs that want to throw themselves into this mix with them. That's cute. Live that fantasy world. It ain't true. So the league's an absolute joke. I also want to shine a light on the fact that, when we talk about players, what could potentially go down, like, it's crazy to me how it flipped so quickly. So I am extremely intrigued in finding out what comes out during these 10 days in terms of what's flipped it all and where the evidence is. More so, the discussions that were being had and the rumors of Allegri coming in and not Allegri, Agnelli coming back, buying into the club. For me, that's done and dusted, because while we're frustrated and the league is a joke and all this shit is loopholes and stuff that we're getting punished on, no actual definitive rules, players' values and whatnot. This happened under his watch for me now, right? Like, the 10 years with him were fantastic. You know, the decade of dominance, all this, like, it'll never get unmatched. But the wiretaps that we were getting showed that there was some ridiculousness coming out of Paratici. And when you have other guys amongst that management team that are saying things like Cherubini was saying about Paratici, how on earth do you, as Andrea Agnelli, not step in and shut that whole thing down before it gets to something like this? So for me,
we don't really know what this is.
Back, like, I'm sorry.
No idea.
I'm done. Like, I'm sorry.
You're done with Agnelli, not the club. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
You're done with him coming back. All right.
I'm done with Agnelli coming back, purchasing the club based on the fact that from the wiretaps, what we did see, again, nothing crazy with like they were making it out to be from all the wiretaps I saw and read. However, it did make Paratici look like a bigger idiot than I thought he was after watching All or Nothing. And the fact that went down under Agnelli's watch, for me, I don't want him buying it and coming back, to be honest.
So speaking of Paratici, I saw somebody put in the notes here that earlier on that Tottenham is trying to figure out, well, what does that mean for Paratici here in England? Like, is there any sort of ramifications for that? Yeah, go ahead.
So his ban goes to FIFA, and then FIFA decides whether it's upheld for just in Italy or if it's upheld for Europe in general. If FIFA approves the ban, then he would be removed as their sporting director or whatever he does for Spurs. But that was something.
Well, that's a good thing for Juventus because, you know, England rules the world in terms of football. So they won't allow that to happen to an English club. So maybe
it's also really good if they want Antonio Conte next year because there's no chance he stays if Paratici's not around. That's kind of like the last person holding on to him. But what I was going to say, you guys had touched a little bit in the comment about contract extensions, player redemptions. That's
where I wanted to go to next anyways.
Yeah, more so the news this morning has been around, hey, if Juventus isn't in Europe with financial fair play, how does that affect things? We already know that Paredes' redemption becomes near impossible. There's rumors about Milik's redemption even becoming a little bit difficult. which is kind of scary because it's not a lot. There are some rumors about the redemption of Keane. Now, I don't really know about that one because that's supposed to already have been triggered, but there's no real clarity. That would be something for, our guest next week to kind of discuss. Same with Locatelli. Like, I thought that one was done, but you keep reading rumors that, it's not activated yet. So that's where it becomes really, really dicey. What I will say is, before people panic on big players, I think as a whole, the fan base in the last 2 to 3 years has been frustrated with some of these star players that come to Serie A for 2 to 3 years and then jump ship to the Premier League or Bayern or La Liga afterwards. With Juventus, they do have a really good core of young players, right? We've done a lot of this form has been with not our top players, not your Pogba's, not your Vlahovic's, not barely Chiesa. He's been around, but he's played mostly as a super sub. The silver lining in all this is that if bigger players that, are kind of like mercenaries, they're only here, for a couple years, they want to use this as a stepping stone, those players are going to leave. The players who really want to be here will stick it out. And I think as long as they're able to stick it out, as long as the redemption doesn't hold them back, I think that there is some silver lining in there. Some of that youth that we hear so much about, we already knew before the European ban that the club wanted to invest in the youth. They might get front and center. It's just a question of how many players, in addition to that, we could lose based on not having Europe, based on whatever else comes out of this. I mean, after a reduction of 15 points, they could literally do anything to us. I don't know what will happen next.
That's the big thing,
right? Yeah.
That's the wild thing, is the unknown right now at this point, right? All we can do is wait for details. I tell you, we announced yesterday that Romeo Gresti's coming on Friday. What a time for that guy to come in, because he's going to get absolutely bombarded with what he knows and what he's found out, and it's crazy. But that look out for that one, everybody. Again, big announcement yesterday was Romeo Gresti will be with us on Friday, coming up for a live. We are going to get to press conference. I see Alex P talking a bit about Max's presser today ahead of the Atalanta match, and just again, shitty circumstance for any coach to have to take the podium after the bomb like that yesterday. I will say this. Max did a good job. Before we get into that, I want to remind everybody, you don't have to wait because this is an impromptu show. Storm the barn questions, fire away at will.
Get them out there.
We came on here today with absolutely no game plan, no agenda.
Zero agenda.
Spitballing our thoughts and everything on what's going down.
Space for everyone to
yell
at.
Yeah, this is a therapy session for all of us. All right. So I will say this as well. I think we maybe slipped up in saying FIFA, but I think the Paratici call is actually UEFA, not FIFA. But I think that's what Lou was getting at. So storm the barn. Yeah, we can kind of get to that. Anything, guys, your guys' thoughts on Max's presser before we kind of get to storm the barn? Because
before we get to storm the barn questions and Max's presser, I would like to point out that this TikToker right over here 2 shows ago said, if Max is the manager next season, he is going to give away 10 jerseys. This guy right here. Well, I'm going to post that video off the main in a little bit, but there is
I thought about that after this all went down. I said, fuck, he's going to be here.
So you said it. Now, that's still, hey, listen, it is what it is. Start saving up your pennies. Or we got to get more people subscribed, because there's no way you're going to be able to afford that. Or the numbers are going to fall off. Those are the kind of jerseys people are going to get.
They might be on
Max's Max, again, for all his faults, was the right manager to have on that stage today, because, and Lou, if you want to get into a little bit of the details of his presser, he basically said, tomorrow we have 22 points. We're going after 25 points. Everything else, we got to put the players on the field. And okay, the firing of the board or the resignation of the board in November, I could see how that would sort of maybe jostle the players a little bit, but they can sort of distance themselves from that, because they're like, I don't really know who those people are. I don't deal with them. But something like this, like they worked to the point where they got into second place or third place, and it was all taken away. So the demoralizing factor for me is those players who worked, over those 8 game unbeaten streak to claw themselves back into the top 4. And now they see this. So is Max for this season, potentially next season, the right guy to sort of rally the troops you got to keep going forward and stay focused on the task at hand here. Maybe Lou, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, as I was doing the press conference for the admin this morning and reading through it, like everyone else on the show, there are faults with Max this season that, like I look at him and just go, what are you doing? I've been critical of him, but there is kind of an element that I am a little thankful that we have Allegri at the head. And today was one of those times where you look at it and you're like, the way that he spoke, first off, it's straight to task. It's, hey, we're at 22 points. He was asked about, what do you think of the 9-point reduction? He goes, I immediately thought, how do I get into the Champions League? And they were like, well, what about 15? He goes, I changed my plans, but we're still looking to get into the Champions League. He had a really great line in there saying it was about, they asked him if it changed his future. Like, would you leave Juventus, with everything going on? And he said, I am the Juventus manager. I plan on being the Juventus manager unless they fire me. You need men in situations like this, and men will come back stronger when things get difficult. And I really thought about that line. And, Allegri's not a raw guy like Conte was. But what Allegri's really good at is that practical, okay, what's done is done. We have to accept it. We need to look at what's in front of us. You can't worry about the outside noise and keep moving forward. And his press conference today, I thought was very brilliant. He didn't really talk about what Scandavino said, what Ferrero said. It was just straight back to football. It was, hey, we have 22 points. We need 25 to get to 7th. We need, I think he said something. We need 60 points to be
60.
Yeah.
To get in the Europa League. Yeah.
Fourth place. That's like 82 points total. Little extraordinary, but he was like, and we got to concentrate on the Europa League and the Coppa Italia because, I think people forget if Juventus somehow win the Europa League, they would qualify for the Champions League. So that's, it was less doom and gloom. And that, I think, to answer your question properly, I have an amount of respect that, as bad as this stint has been for Allegri, it's way worse than his first stint at the club. If he leaves at the end of the season, he'll still hold my respect in the fact that he had to navigate some circumstances this year that were unprecedented. Not just the start that they had, but your whole board resigning, then the World Cup break, then to come back. If they put together another run and they even get close to the top 4, I mean, that is just remarkable in itself, right? Even if they go,
he's buying 10 jerseys
this year, right? Like, like the win the Coppa Italia, like after everything that happened, it's just, it's incredible. So I think that this is his press conference was very, very good.
I like Max Allegri when he's serious, not when he's trying to be the jokester and making, some of these jokes that are tone deaf or whatnot that only the Allegri diehards like. But this presser was spot on. The comment about the men was fantastic. Like, now we need men. This is the rallying of the troops from Max Allegri. Everything he said was spot on. Everything was right. This team they should go for broke in Europa. And even if there's a ban coming and whatever, but like, they need to go for broke after that thing. And it's gonna be interesting. But Chiesa, let's go, buddy. Your time. Get the fire going.
You want to get to this thing here from Rick real quick?
Yeah, actually, awesome stuff. Grazie, Rick. Obviously, the scarf's behind me. JCD Melbourne, Gigi Buffon, the only fan club to have Gigi Buffons in there. Yeah, just saying, cannot believe they've done it again. And it all started from the top. Agnelli changing logo, talking future, but forgetting the fans and bad player deals. CR7, 2 years too late. Ramsey, Arthur. I'm going to tie this CR7 thing into something else. All right. And again, Rick, thank you very, very much for the super chat donation. That's awesome. Really, really much appreciated. Storm the Barn, man. I'm flagging them. Keep them coming, everybody. We will get into this. Okay. CR7 deal. Okay. This is why, we have spoken about it on this. Lou brought out the fact that Lotito, that De Laurentiis were talking about this whole thing and backing Juve. I think at some point, as clubs of the league, okay? And this is why I always feel a certain way, okay? This has come up on shows before in Champions League. Juve's been knocked out of a round, whatnot. There might be another team in and whatnot. And I always say, I don't give a shit. I could care less. And it's always because of things like this. If these other clubs actually really truly felt the way some of their words have been over the past months with this investigation looming and everything, knowing damn well they do the exact same thing because it's loopholes amongst those regulations. If they really felt a certain way, and De Laurentiis says things like, we've all, taken leaves off the Juve tree or whatnot and leached onto that at certain moments, especially during that decade of dominance when Serie A was a little bit softer and Juve was at the forefront bringing that attention. Juve goes out, signs CR7, COVID hits. They all benefited from CR7 being in Serie A. They all benefited from that. Band together and fight Serie A, because this is a joke. And for Juve to try and do it on their own, it's beating a dead horse. But if the clubs were actually smart enough to get together, to make things right, to realize that none of them are going to thrive, no matter what any of these donkey rival fans are going to be out there saying and telling you and ready to dance on our grave or whatnot, the league is not going to thrive. These clubs need to band together and they need to say, okay, let's look at this like logically and realize that what you're doing is turning the whole championship into a joke. But it'll never happen.
Yeah, and you would think that they would learn, because if we go back a decade, right? They got Milan right after we won the first Scudetto. They went after Berlusconi hard. He had to sell all the players. Everyone left. They had a banter era, right? Inter was in the middle of a banter era. Then they got Roma in 2017. Roma gets to the UCL semifinal and then gets hit with financial fair play, right? The very next season just completely destroys that team, or any hope they had of building the project. Like, if you're Roma or you're Lazio or you're Napoli, and you have, like, we hear that Roma, bringing Mourinho, we have this ambition. Napoli, with all due respect to them, have kicked the crap out of everyone this year, right? And they have this ambition to be one of the big clubs, right? What does this message send to one of those clubs? It's like, yeah, that's great that you found all these really good players, but when you sell Victor Osimhen for $200 million, we're going to just slam you for it because you overcharged for it. It's like that's what the press that they're sending. And I almost feel like some of these clubs, this is just my opinion. Of course, what do I know? But in my opinion, I feel like these clubs, they're just a little bit afraid that, if they say something or they stand up, they're going to be under the microscope. Kind of like how Agnelli, to all of his faults, went in front of Europe and was like, hey, what's going on here? The imbalance is improper. And I don't think we touched on this, but we got to be honest here. There's some outside players aside from just Italy and Serie A looking at this hard. I think there's some European Supreme Courts. I think the UEFA thing, they're all kind of a little bit of pressure, like, hey, hit Juventus, we'll help you out. Making a deal with the devil. We all know that they only care about two things: the Premier League and their signing money.
Yeah, but the thing is that there is strength in numbers. I mean, if Juve continues to battle this thing alone, it's never going to get anywhere. I do agree with you, Joe or Lou, that these guys are nervous, probably, to get involved, and everybody wants to just kind of stand to the side. Hey, we're not a part of this or whatnot. But it's going to be very interesting if it does ever get to these 5 other clubs and charges that they're going to face, because the original 8 or whatever have been swept aside outside of Juventus, but 5 other clubs. So it's going to be really interesting to see what comes of it from that standpoint. Let's get to some of these now, just because they're building up. But Ant, go ahead first.
I was just going to say, you both brought up a good point, is that until the league, and again, coming back to North American sports, like you two would know, like the NFL owners, they have their committees, they band together, and it's basically the owners versus the league, or they have the commissioner of the league. But it's more of a symbiotic relationship, because it has to be. Now, it's tough to compare the Serie A to the NFL. The NFL is an absolute juggernaut money machine, so you can't really do it. But the fact is that when the owners band together and try and have a unified front for betterment of the league, it's only positive results. So
yeah,
again,
can I say,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just got this update for the news.
Yep.
Per Romeo Agresti, Ferraro and Scandavino to the team group today. In the face of injustice, we need to be united, and everyone does their own job. Us defending the club in the right venues, and you scoring on the pitch and securing points. Today, more than ever, you represent millions of fans around the world. That was Scandavino and Ferraro speaking to the squad this morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just want to throw that out there.
And I will thank you again for all the work with the news, Lou. Absolutely incredible, especially past a few days. Anytime stuff like this happens, everybody should be saying some thanks here in live chat. If you're following us on Twitter, I don't know why you wouldn't, but Lou is pulling some heavy weight when it comes to the news.
Omer too. Omer's been killing it.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump on one point here before we get to Storm the Barn, and this is something that would help Serie A, but I'm going to flip it back on you. Why would a U.S. company invest in a Serie A team after this? They have no. This would give them no sort of they investigate teams over there. Please, I'll take $1 billion over there. It sounds like a lot of fun.
It
won't happen.
The potential is massive. Huge. If you get enough of these investors to come in here, because the league can turn around and it could do so quickly, regardless of the fact that, the Prem is so far ahead and stuff. Serie A still is a quality league. And I mean, if you looked at the point totals, obviously prior to this ridiculous deduction, but you take Napoli outside of that, that's one hell of a race from 7th to 2nd or whatever. It was insane. It's like 4 points was basically between all of them. It's a great league, okay? And it has the potential to be a lot. USA investing, it could help big time. But the big thing is the gap with Premiership and all the garbage and all the nonsense that comes in Serie A from the dinosaurs at FIGC and everything else. But this is wild turn of events. But yeah, I don't know.
I kind of agree. The pessimist in me says, why would you invest? Again, like let's take Juventus, for example. There were some rumors that John Elkann would want to sell, right? Well, if the next verdict comes in and we get reduced more points, let's say we drop to let's say we finish 10th this year. Is an investor going to look at Juventus and be like, all right, they have how many million in debt? They just missed the Champions League. They don't, big players will leave, right? You're kind of looking around. You're like, what's the marketing ploys, right? To some extent, though, what you were saying, Berto, about how you flip it on kind of the FA and the FIGC. In the Premier League, a lot of the foreign investors came in and they kind of took the power away from the Premier League. Even the bans that they give aren't what they once were, or because there's no loyalty to it anymore. There's no, the FIGC, we got to bow down to them. It's like, yeah, I don't give a shit. They mean nothing to me. Yeah. So that's where it gets a little kind of, we'll see. We've seen with some Americans, Atalanta's American owner has done really well with that club, where it's been to where it is now but I don't know. It's interesting. I'd be curious if anyone would take it with the league the way it is.
Before we get those Storm the Barn questions, the FA cleaned up things themselves, which brought investors in. They decided we got to clean this league up, which brought the investors in. And then Apex brought up a good point here. It's a Mickey Mouse operation over there. Until Serie A cleans themselves up, they're not, or vice versa, the clubs. There's not going to be any future investors. Yeah, Al, we should get to some of these Storm the Barn questions. Let me start with the first one here. We touched on this earlier. Hopefully, Karen is still here. Yeah, so that we have 30 days to appeal, but realistically, the appeal won't be heard. We have 30 days to lodge the appeal, but it won't be heard until at least April. So
yeah, and I'm not sure on the second part there. Can we appeal after Coney? I'm not so sure. I think that's done and dead.
That's the end. That's the end of the road.
The rumors this morning. That's it.
Yeah. That's the end. And I don't think once they make a verdict, you can fight that and continue on with that. I think that's pretty much it. Boycotting the game tomorrow.
No, they will play.
That will not, again,
that won't help.
Home game, you got to play.
Strength is in numbers. If it's just Juve and we boycott it, I don't see them caring right now. Like I said, either the ownership comes together and unifies itself, or it's nothing. Yeah, I'm afraid. What should happen is any penalties should be assessed next season after appeals. Yes,
so
because
that makes
if
sense.
you're doing it now, freeze the league. What are we talking about here? You know, like
Joe, you're making
stop making sense.
You're making too much sense for Serie A.
Yeah, you're.
That
makes way too much sense.
Yeah.
Hell of a pick, by the way. That's the real deal there on the profile for YouTube. Okay, that's the real deal there.
I got my own picture on YouTube. What you guys done?
Alex P just making a point here about Vlahovic, and he's yelling here. Still hasn't.
This is the one. So I saved this one. It's a good question. Does it make for you? Does it make
called him a rat bastard?
Yeah, that's a little
not a question, but
let's pump the brakes there, Alex. Alex, long-time listener, so we can dump on him a little bit, and he understands that.
It's all Alex on the agenda here a little bit.
Are you guys looking for players to comment at this point? Do you care? For me, maybe the captains.
It's nice, but I don't really care. Right. I'm looking at the team and the response, and like I said, even before when this thing was thrown away, and I'm kind of curious about this too, because if you guys remember, and Anth was on the show with me and whatnot, the second it got kicked out the second time, I said, at what point does Juve fight back and actually start to go on the attack rather than sit here and be on the defense? And you can't help but wonder if all of a sudden, if they rattled more cages, okay, and opened up this big can of worms, that this could potentially be, because this is not exclusive to Italy, this plusvalenza thing, this salary maneuvering thing through COVID and whatnot. This is not exclusive to them. And I can't help but wonder if they push back harder at that moment in time, if it would have been a little bit different if we were on the attack, so to speak, rather than sitting there and defend it. Did you guys think about that too, or?
Well, I felt more so that the confusion that we have as to like what we're being charged with, what they really have against us. I don't think the club like fully understood like we do. Like we're kind of like, what are they charging us for? Like, this is illegal now. I think there's an element of the club maybe playing defensive because they just didn't know like what was going to be leveled against them, right? Like they knew, hey, it's plusvalenza, it's this, but these like, new evidence or whatever, like it all seems just like very forced and kind of like out of nowhere. So maybe I think after this, maybe we might see them go on the offensive a little bit before these other charges, because there are some rumors this morning that the capital gains could be further point reduction. So what's next?
Yeah.
So there is something here I want to touch on before we keep going. So after Coney there, I was just looking this up. There is the Court of Arbitration of Sports. So what are we talking about here? How long
I think we're talking low percentage after Coney, though. I think that's kind of like more what we were answering. I don't think once that's actually interesting, and we should take a look at that before tomorrow's match day live, is what the percentages are after Coney's made a ruling and going through CAS. That's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to look into that one because I'm curious to know. I don't think it's high by any means.
Good per the news. It didn't seem good per the news, but who knows what the papers, they kind of like to over dramatize things.
It's the evidence. What the hell was in that evidence that made them go from 9 to 15 points? Do you think this is a sacrifice for Serie A to allow
UEFA to come in and rebuild Italy? BS regardless, Forza UEFA. Do you think this is a sacrifice from Serie A to allow UEFA?
No. Serie A is not that forward thinking. They're not that smart. Remember the anti-racism ad with the monkeys on it? Like, what are we talking? This is the same people we're talking about who made that ad. Yeah. There is no way they're this forward thinking.
Yeah.
I saw this yesterday on Twitter. This is a little off topic, but I kind of agree with it. Whoever, when the dust clears, assuming Juventus, doesn't get $1 billion per point reductions and end up in, the second division, God forbid, but it is a possibility, rather small, but it is. Juventus should just disband from Serie A. I think that a couple years from now, they should sell themselves to League One, Bundesliga, and just pick up and move. And what's the point of staying around? You build yourself up for a decade of dominance, and that's kind of how you're treated.
Is that even possible? Just up in league and go to Bundesliga or like Liga? Is that even a thing?
When the Super League, I went back and read about it. When the Super League came out, the idea for the Super League was that they could unregister from their leagues and join that league. Because there was an idea for a while around the Super League that they were all going to pick one league and just join it.
Yeah, Juventus is just registered in Serie A. You're just registered in that league.
This is wild to think about, man. Like absolutely wild to think about.
Teams outside of Europe it'll never happen. But just hypothetically.
Yeah. It's
guess
just
what, guys? We got Stuttgart at home this week.
This is even coming up in something that like
fans are
looking at. How bad is that for Serie A that like your most successful club, its fan base is actually like thinking about and like seriously contemplating having the team leave and register for another league. Like, wake the fuck up, you stupid dinosaurs. I'm so sick and tired of those clowns, man. It's unbelievable. Michael Raz, how funny is that they asked for 9-point reduction only to have a 2-hour meeting and switch it to 15? Anyone see the bias? And it just, I mean, we talked about this. Like,
right at the beginning. Rewind it.
Was it even 2 hours? Like, it felt fast like this, and it was just done and dusted. Oh yeah, they're gonna have the verdict this out. It's like, what in the hell are you doing? And then
this is why I'm waiting for the 10 days, because I'd be very interested to see what the evidence was that was presented, because remember, the whole board resigned. Agnelli resigned for a reason. They must have known whatever evidence they must have an inkling, and we talked about this earlier, what evidence they're going to present. I'd be very interested to see what evidence they presented and how, when it all comes out in 10 days. And you want to know something? They may be guilty as hell. They might be.
Yeah, that's always possible.
But for me, the 15 points still does not make sense. Where is the precedence for the 15 points? I think we all agree if there was shenanigans happening, financial penalties make sense. But how do you go from financial penalties to 9 points and then to 15 points? Very interested to see how that happens.
I also I think that part of the thing that like really ticks me off is out of all the stuff that's leveraged against us, right? The capital gains, maybe fudging the books, I think is the one that like you could see Juventus being the most guilty of, right? Just kind of based on things that are floating out there a little bit. That's probably the one that you'd be like, all right, if I put on percentage, that might be the one. Yeah. So I think getting this verdict and then knowing that verdict is coming, it feels very witch hunt like. And I guess call it as is very witch hunt like. It's like, okay, we're just going to keep doing this, right? Because let's say that verdict comes in March and Juventus kind of righting the ship a little bit again. It's like, all right, we'll give them another deduction. That's what it feels like. It feels like, maybe before we were cleared, we weren't competing for the title. We weren't like loosely around it.
I just don't see the correlation to the sporting side right now. Any way you slice it. I listen to I read these things everyone's posting under one of my tweets, and I'm like, that is a huge reach to try and tie that into the sporting side. So it's just like, especially in Serie A and UEFA, that's a different ballgame, but I'm just not feeling it as far as that comes.
The sporting penalty, reducing the 15 points and making Juventus miss Europe has financial ramifications.
Yeah,
correct. Couldn't that be the logic behind it?
Well, that's what that came out yesterday, to say the prosecutor was making the argument that Juventus should be penalized 9 points to fall below Rome, so they're out of the European position.
You guys think Vlahovic will be with us next season?
No. Not a chance. Even if we were in the top 4, I don't think he'd be around.
I was feeling like he was going to be, like I said, there's been a lot of smoke, and this will be a great one for Romeo Agresti when he comes on Friday is he getting anything from Vlahovic, and is Vlahovic in fact looking? Is there anything from his camp that suggests being unsettled and maybe looking for a move? It'll be an interesting one for Aggressive. But I said I felt a certain way about Vlahovic that maybe, just maybe, he was thinking about heading out with this, depending on what comes. Yeah, I mean, if we don't get into a European competition, I could easily see him not sticking around.
He also
that's because you're too emotional. But
he also attracts $100 million.
You think he's going to stay at?
Well, we hold all the cards there. Like we hold all the power on that deal. So my thing is that Juventus is facing transfer bans at a minimum, right? Probably at a minimum, we're facing some European transfer bans. On the field, Juventus can't afford to release players or sell players. Now, you're going to come back with, well, the salaries might be able to afford it, but they're going to need to hold on to some of these young players as much as possible, including Vlahovic. So I could see it, but from a technical standpoint on the field, Juventus needs him to stay.
Yeah, but we're not talking about what they need. If he steps in there and he says, I want out of here, they're not going to keep him, man. Not when you're in this much debt. I mean, does it really matter? Serie A apparently wants us to sell him for 20 million, according to everything that's going on here.
That's a good point, yeah.
So what do we even sell him for? We have to ask now, is it okay if we sell him for 90 million? It's a fucking joke. But listen, if he steps in there in the summer and says, no, I want out of here, they're not keeping him, man. Regardless if it's in our hands, they're going to find a deal. They're going to move him. And they need money anyways. So I don't see it. If the penalties get more severe, whatnot, if we're missing out on European football, I could easily see Vlahovic not sticking around. However,
who else can you see?
However, I will say this: if he does stick around, he would flip in my mind in what I kind of had as far as a perception of him, to be honest. So,
I don't see, if there was a player to leave, I know someone mentioned this morning, 3 big players may leave because of this, and the names were Rabiot, Tech, and McKennie. I couldn't even believe I read those 3 names on that tweet.
Well, Rabiot's leaving anyway. So.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Tech, we got Pedin there, and then McKennie, whatever. But realistic. Okay, I see your point about Vlahovic. I do. Other than Vlahovic, because of all this, realistically, if there's a transfer ban, what other players do you see leaving? I can't really, all the times I could see staying.
Here's the thing is, and those names that you brought up, and it's like,
there you go.
What are we talking about? Rabiot was going to leave anyways. Tech's got 1 year left on his contract. They were probably maybe thinking about selling anyways because they're already bringing in young keepers and looking at younger keepers. Pedin's there. Rabiot, Tech, McKennie's on. He's kind of for sale already. Quadrado, Sandro leaving naturally. Di Maria is going to be leaving anyways. Like
Kostic?
No.
I don't know if Kostic really. I don't know. Maybe that's a weird one. But we've got a lot of young guys coming in here. Like I don't expect Chiesa leaving. Locatelli's going to stay. Gatti's going to stay. Bremer, I think, staying.
Well, so I was actually going to suggest Bremer. The reason being is they have a lot. There's going to be a lot of interest in Bremer this summer. He caught a lot of headwind around the World Cup. There's a lot of rumors about PSG. There's some about the Premier League. I don't think it's not a knock on Bremer the person, because I have no complaints about Bremer the player, the person, but that's going to be kind of hard with no prior attachment to Juventus. Pogba's not going anywhere because he has no value.
Yeah, Pogba's locked in kind of thing. This is an interesting one. I talked about this a little bit. I kind of got into it when we started talking about players and who Juve's bringing in. And I'm like saying that there's a different feel because before, and this got into the money thing too. And when a lot of fans now are associating losing with playing younger players. And you know what I mean? Like there's this automatic perception that, okay, we're going to play young guys. We're automatically not going to win or whatever. We're going to become a feeder team and whatnot. But what I was saying is
feeder team, but
Juve bought young players way back in the day. All these 90s teams that you see all over Instagram and Twitter, whatnot, that people are highlighting, whatnot. You look at those rosters, those were cheap purchases. Yes, the money cheap back then is different to cheap now, but still overall in the grand scheme of things, these were young players that they paid that had big impacts on Juve. Tudor, Tacchinardi, the list goes on and on. Pesotto Birindelli. But listen, what ended up happening is now if you start looking at this Juventus is I still feel back then to now, we used to mold players back then. And now we don't really mold them so much. We're like, we're getting them. They're coming in here, but there's no like structure or guideline or characteristics. And we're looking at market opportunities rather than building these players. If you look at Zinedine Zidane, Zidane was a talent, no doubt, but he made himself at Juve. Zidane became Zinedine Zidane. He became Zizou at Juve. If you look at, and the list goes on and on, but these guys that stuck around in 2006, it's because Juventus turned them in to men and who they were and those big, larger-than-life characters. Whereas right now, I feel like we're looking at marketable opportunities and whatnot, and I feel like there's no mold for them to like, this is what we're trying to groom you into being and whatnot. I feel like that's kind of lost.
I think you're right. And I'm bringing it forward a little bit. When Agnelli first took over and he hired Antonio Conte, after the Del Neri incident, not being well, but brought in Conte. That was the gist, right? Was we're going to develop a style and a way of playing. And we lost that over time. As we got bigger, we lost it. We moved away from it. Which, ended up being proven the wrong thing. But you look at that team, the 2011, 2012 team that won that first Scudetto and the players that were brought in. Yeah, we know there was Pirlo. There was, Chiellini. There was Barzagli, Buffon. But people like Bonucci, who was kind of a raw talent that they knew, maybe could get there one day. Or, Marchisio, who was a Primavera, player. Vidal was a younger player, right? They start kind of with it. And I think that one of the good things is during this reset period, when we were on that streak, right, up before the Napoli game, a lot of those wins didn't come from your Vlahoviches or your Pogbas. It was Keane. It was Milik. It was the young players. It was Kostic, the players that weren't north of 40 million, right? It was the younger guys. I mean, Chiesa was barely there for a lot of it. It was those guys, Locatelli, it was the younger side of the team. So I think that, going back to that, if there's anything that's taken away from this, it's that you now have an opportunity to rebuild the way you want to. It starts with the next gen because they're important. Just because you're playing young players, it's not really even the fact that they're young players. It's the fact that from a young age, if you read the next gen press conference, it's because they're taught the things that made Juventus great at a young age, and they're able to mold them, like you were saying. So I think that's the idea in place is that, hey, we have these guys, this core group of guys. We're not saying it's going to be 11 youngsters. We're just talking about a few, like the Fagiolis, the Morettis, the Idling Juniors, the guys that kind of stood out.
Idling's very good.
Yeah. Swiller, you show some promise as well. They're still relevant, but those kind of core guys, that if they have that Juventus kind of mold, right, we can start there. And it's just that the players around them, they either have it or they don't. In the case of Vlahovic, either you can be molded into a Juventus player or you can see the door, right? And I think that if anything, we were seeing that a little bit before this. I think if anything, this is just going to exemplify, kind of the more of that process.
Yeah.
I have a fantastic Storm the Barn question here, and this one is directly shot at Lou right here.
Never.
Hey, what's the count on this jersey for Jeremiah here?
If Rabiot comes back and says, hey, this is my team, I will take a pay cut, and I'm going to stick with this team.
This is Serie B.
through thick and thin. I'm going to stay. You wouldn't change your mind on Rabiot?
No. Because it will never happen.
People,
hey, we know Lou's like an elephant. Come on, we know what Lou's like. He's like an elephant. This guy doesn't forget. He's not dropping this thing.
You guys gotta understand. And
he's too committed, man. He's all in now.
As the in the order of things that I support, it's my agendas: Juventus, Italy.
That's good. That's good.
I'll think about it.
No, you won't.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to a couple more here. So Jeremiah coming in here with, this is actually a blessing in disguise. Max will be forced not to sit back now. We have to go all out every single game.
Disagree.
Do you see a change in approach because of it, or
no? How did we win 8 in a row with no clean sheets? Not like this.
I think Max thinks that he can win playing the way that he plays.
I mean, if he hasn't changed yet, it ain't coming.
Yeah.
I don't see it come. But I think he's banking on that whole thing changing with Chiesa, Di Maria, Vlahovic and Pogba coming back next week. That was in the news too. So next week, these guys should be back. Hopefully, especially Pogba having a big impact in the middle of the pitch. But Vlahovic up top, we got to get him firing.
Rabiot is not playing
Patrick against Atalanta. Thanks for the kit.
He's not playing against Atalanta, but for everyone who doesn't know what the hell Jeremiah is talking about, if Rabiot scores 10 goals this season, this noodlehead down here is buying Jeremiah a jersey. Is that how it works? That's right,
how
right?
it works.
I believe that was the deal. Yes.
Yeah. Now,
I believe that was the deal. That was the deal, Luke.
Why not give us a transfer ban? Why did you? Well, hey.
Oh, it's coming.
What do I always say?
Yeah. It is
Juve against the world. Always has been, always will be. Now, I always get nervous when
colonoscopies?
No. The Skangas have a little phrase. It must be like a family phrase.
I knew this was coming.
Okay, so your brother, I put
Big
a little
Bruno.
tweet out there, and in comes Big Bad Bruno. Lawyers being lawyers. The FIGC is just trying to make an example of Juve by pretending to play hardball for the media. Appeals will bring the penalty to single digits. Book it. And I simply just responded, they've already stated that they cannot bring the deduction down. It's all or nothing. And he did not respond. But anytime Kanga tells me to book it, I can't help but
bad things are about to happen.
I'm going to defend Big Bruno on this because he has way more responsibilities than all of us combined. So he's just, he doesn't have time for this like we have time for this. So you did correct him, but I'm going to stand by it. It's going to go down to 0. I'm sticking with Big Bruno on this one.
Oh God, we're getting relegated now.
There you go. We'll see what happens now.
You know what you can do, Lou, to yourself.
We're finally getting caught up into the nitty-gritty of the Storm the Barn. You guys are on fire today, by the way. Juve should hire old players who went through Calciopoli like Buffon, ADP, Chiellini, and give them management positions to help guide the club and these players. They give Juve that DNA. So this Storm the Barn question came out while we were talking about grooming players, breeding characters, turning them into these figures and these pillars for the team. Now, what do you guys think about bringing guys like this in? I mean, there's a lot of smoke around Del Piero coming back once the new management team is formed. I can't stress this enough. Again, just the board's been named. Still no sporting director. And Cherubini's gone now with his ban. So we got a couple temps apparently coming in. But yeah, like I have no problem with these guys coming in. And Chiellini's got his business degree and whatnot. ADP, it's all about finding the roles that work for them specifically. But ADP and Chiellini, I see the most. When you hear Alessandro Del Piero speak about Juventus, he is a smart guy. And he's been very methodical over the past 2 months about what he's said when it comes to Juve, what he said about performances, and what he said about players. He has been speaking as if he's been in management for much longer than the rumors even began. If we look at Alessandro Del Piero, Chiellini, we know he went away and there was a role waiting for him for return. So I think that's happening for sure. But I see nothing bad coming of that. If you get these guys that were especially involved in a period like that, but just they're larger than life figures at the club already. And if they play a part into it, it's all good. Del Piero is like, even with the young up and coming players, like he will attract players on his own being incorporated. And if he started to like put calls out, whatever, and it's like, you're a young guy, and it's like, holy shit, Alessandro Del Piero's calling me about, you know, how you feel about coming to Juventus or whatnot. Like, he still has that effect. And you could see it when he goes to these matches as a pundit and an analyst. You could see that respect that he gets and garnishes. So I have no problems with it. And I think it's a good idea to incorporate probably 2 of them in a management team. But Lou, your thoughts on these guys getting involved?
You know, my first thought yesterday, well, after everything broke out and I left work and I was driving home, was, shit, wouldn't this be a good time for Chiellini to retire and just come back into the fold in some way? Like, it just felt so natural. So I definitely think like him, Del Piero, Buffon. I don't know if Buffon ever comes back and works for Juventus. He could one day. He could, but I think that Buffon, he might have like a larger role within the Italian Federation. He seems something that's like, it's more like a beacon for Italian football is his future. He also may never retire, so that's another, you know, problem. But I agree. Del Piero sounds like a VP already.
Yeah. So my thing a couple months ago was, what role would you give these people? Like, you know, where would they fit? You know, Chiellini, you know, he has the masters in business. I had my doubts about Del Piero, but then TikToker over here was like, well, here's his business acumen. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. But what I realized, or what I found out, was that you had Trezeguet, who was an ambassador for the team, which is something that you don't hear about and potentially does a lot of good behind the scenes. So in those roles, even in those roles, you can't lose. With Buffon and Chiellini in those roles.
Trezeguet was the ambassador at the same time as Edgar Davids.
Right. So, you know, nothing but positive for that. I would disagree with Lou in the sense that Buffon going to Serie A, because that, you know, they're, again, not that forward thinking to bring in somebody of that stature to help the league out. No chance.
I also think that Del Piero's role, we should clarify, if it's based on like the Milan, like Maldini role, he's partnered with an actual businessman, where it's kind of like he is like the football reference point. Like, hey, what do you think about this player? What do you think about the grand project? Where's football going? And then the businessman is kind of like the sporting director is like, all right, how do I execute that vision?
But so, you got to be careful there, because even like lately, from what I see in Milan Twitter, I don't follow a lot of it, but they're starting to, you know, the wind is starting to switch the sails on fans on what they think of the job that Maldini's doing. They had a lot of misses last year on the summer market. Again, I don't really give a shit about other clubs. This is sort of what I'm hearing.
No, that's a very fair.
You got to kind of be careful what role you put them in, because, you know, Maldini, I think honestly we're all fans of Maldini as a player.
Yeah.
But you don't want to put someone in that position. In our case, it would be Del Piero, where you would start to be like, yeah, you know, you start to rust over the shine a little bit.
The way Agnelli did it the first time, which is you bring a couple guys in as ambassadors. Nedved was the vice president, but when he first started was, you know, kind of a more, you know, consultant. He was the bridge between management and the squad, right? You know, is there some role for like a Chiellini or a Buffon or a Del Piero in that capacity, where it's the businessman or the businessman and you're the link in between? I don't know if someone like Del Piero would want to do that, but I could see someone like Chiellini doing that.
Another reason why I hate the Premier League, just tying in Paolo Maldini. I saw somebody, I think it was Instagram, whatever, doing a top 10 list, this Premier channel, whatever, top 10 list of best defenders ever. Didn't have Maldini in there, actually went as far to say he was overrated. And I stopped and I thought, so you're telling me a guy that was at the top, not only at left back, but then center back for how long? Okay, world class at both positions for so long, is not in your top 10 list of best defenders ever. And it's just like, how, like, this is why I hate the Premier League. Okay. It was mind blowing. Thankfully, the guy he was with laughed at him and said, are you crazy? Are you actually crazy? These Prem guys, I tell you. Anyways, just a funny story tying in Maldini, but I think we talked about this real quick.
Yeah.
I keep saying this all the time. We keep getting the same comments about the board having no football experience. The board is purposely filled with lawyers, accountants, and etc.
Marketing.
And especially because
executives
of these circumstances and whatnot. The management team that has not been assembled will be that of the football minds.
Correct.
Okay. So you might have a guy like Del Piero associate, but we are also bringing in an actual sporting director because since Pepe Marote has left, we have had scouts upgraded and promoted to that role. I can't stress enough how getting a sporting director has to be top priority for this club. But
so we talked about that quite a bit. 2 shows ago was the Monza pregame show. Just quickly, we went from 10 board members to 5. The new board members include the CEO, the Sofraro and Scanavino are on the board. The 3 other members, one is an auditor experience, chartered accountant. The other one is economics and commerce experience. And the third one is an expert in law and supervisory bodies. So those three were put together for the challenges that they knew were coming in the courts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing to do with football.
Yeah.
Like Al said, those people will be hired later.
Okay. So is what it is. Guys, I think on that note, we've caught up to Storm the Barn. This doesn't change anything. This impromptu show today. We are doing a match day live tomorrow. Okay. Mm-hmm. We're going to get that going. What's that?
Back to business, as Allegri says.
There you go. Yeah. Back to business. Head downs, and the grind begins. And it kicks off tomorrow with a big game against Atalanta. We're going to do the match day live. Same time, I am going to be doing a watch along for that game. All right. So everybody, let me replace those commentators out there and let me call the action for you. Make sure you join in and share the live reactions. Hopefully we have a bunch of goals to celebrate. If you can't get motivated now as a player, I question your ticker right there, because these are easy circumstances for that team to bond together and go out there and get the job done. And essentially, as always, it's Juve versus the world, okay, including everybody in our backyard in Serie A. So there you have it. Ant, Lou, everybody in the live chat, hopefully you feel a little bit better. I feel better after my hot start in the show, kind of vented, let a lot of frustrations out, but it all comes down to the same thing. This season, we've been saying this the whole way through, one game and one day at a time. This has been a wild season. This is crazy. I mean, look at what we've had to endure. Look at what these players have gone through. Look at what Max Allegri in his second year of coaching has had to go through. So there's literally you can think back to Monza and the defeat and wanting a coaching change. Okay. You think back to right before the World Cup break, we're at second with a game upcoming against Napoli that could switch everything. Then all of a sudden, okay, you drop the game to Napoli. And now all of a sudden you've got this 15-point deduction. This is an absolutely crazy season. And there's still a ton of it to go. All we can do is take all the news in one day at a time, and let's see what happens. Let's see where the dust settles. Luis, much appreciated, and I'm glad you feel better. Forza Juve, fuck them all. Absolutely. Absolutely. There. All right. Forza Juve, fino alla fine. We'll see you tomorrow morning, everybody. Okay. Ciao tutti. Do not forget to like the video, and if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. All right. Okay. Ciao.